long time. I didn't get it. And I guess I was about 12 or 13 years old, and we were in Indian Guides together. You know, does anybody know Indian Guides? Does anybody remember that? Yeah. It wasn't Boy Scouts, okay? It was different than Boy Scouts. Because Boy Scouts, you go and you have a troop leader and you deal with a bunch of other kids. Indian Guides was a very personal thing because you had to do it with your dad. You had to be there with your dad, and you had to do the crafts with your dad and the campings with your dad and so forth. And this was really fantastic. And he spent 2 years, okay, doing Indian Guides with me and going to all the meetings and so forth. But it wasn't until college I figured out what the downside of the joke was. You know, in Indian Guides, you have to give yourself an Indian name. I didn't really understand the meaning when he put on my tag Little Beaver and Longfellow. Now, if some of you don't know what that means, you can ask somebody else. Okay? But it was very much, I was actually a freshman in college when I actually figured this out and called him up and asked him what the heck was he thinking on that one, and he laughed so very, very hard. You know, this was my dad's sense of humor. Chad brought up a little bit about you know, the return of Chad. You know, we lost Chad to a bad divorce and an Iraqi war. He didn't mention that. He spent time in Iraq defending our country. And he was gone for a very long time, and we didn't really know what was happening then. And that's a whole other story. But my father was really brokenhearted about this. This was something that was very important to him. And so when Chad did, in fact, come back into his life and effectively our lives, I know how much joy that brought him, maybe even closure joy. It was the man that my dad loved to be with. He was the outdoorsman, as he mentioned, somebody that was going to go hunting, camping, doing all those things. I was somewhere else in the world, and that wasn't really happening. Chad did a beautiful job in, you know, being the grandson I think my father always wished he had. So in Dad's closure in life, I think that was probably the biggest one before he passed away, and I think that's a great blessing for us. Okay, well, I'm going to finish up here.